Hey, what's up, lightboltjoe here. Today we are going to discuss book 44 in R.L. Stine's Goosebumps original series, Say Cheese and Die Again. So this is the sequel to the fourth book. Came out in 92. Where's my list of books? There's so many books, bro. So many books. We've been plowing through these. Say Cheese and Die was the fourth book. Okay. So Greg Banks is back. He's our main character, right? His next door neighbor, Sherry, his best friends. They're best friends, Mike and Bird. Everybody's back, right? So the first book takes place in the fall, and we know that because it says it was fall. They were bored. They went out exploring, right? They went to the old Kaufman house or whatever it's called, explored, found the camera. The camera's evil. The creepy guy, Spider, who was the doctor who helped create the camera that had the curse on it, winds up dying in the basement with Sherry and Greg. And then, they tell the cops they found him after they were running away from a storm, even though they fought him. Murder. Well, not murder. He had a heart attack. Whatever. So, the first book ends taking place in fall, and the two bullies of the group, against the group, Mickey and Joey, are following them and find the camera, and then they take the camera and then they play with it. This book starts out, we're in school, right? This book, 96, right? What did I say? June 96? June 96. This starts out, it says, last summer, my friends and I had, found this camera, yada, 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 right? No, it's another continuity error, and it's concerning how nobody realized this back in the 90s when these were first written. How did, first of all, the wonderful author that he is, R.L. Stine, I love his work, but how do you forget what you write? How do you forget the very words that you put to page? I don't understand. We had this problem with the Mummy books, Return of the Mummy and The Mummy Lives, or whatever those books were, right? Where Gabe goes to Egypt on his Christmas vacation, has his mummy adventure. And then the second book says, my cousin and I, last summer, we did this last summer. We saw this mummy last summer. No! Christmas is not in the summer. Christmas is in December, which is the winter. So that continuity error, which changed in a re-release, and I looked that up specifically because it made absolutely no sense how the author didn't pick up on that, how the editor didn't pick up on that, how the proofreaders didn't pick up on that, how the publisher didn't pick up on that. How did no one pick up on that big of a continuity error for that first chunk? Now we have another continuity error. Book 44 versus book 4. 40 books in between, right? A lot of words. I get it. How do you, the author, not remember what you wrote? How do you, the editor, not realize that this is a sequel to a book which references a specific time period, took place in the fall, not last summer, as referenced? No. How do you, the proofreaders, how do you, the publisher? I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get when... I understand when certain books have, minor spelling errors here and there. I get it. Things happen. Things slip through the cracks. There's 3 different versions of the word there, right? The English language is stupid. You have there, and there. You have your THERE. That photo is over there. You have THEIR. Their cousin is coming in for the weekend. You have THEY''RE. They're going to the movies, right? Things happen. I get it, okay? I get it. But when you have specific plot points and character development and you're making a sequel to a book, you have to keep track of these things. It's a disservice to the characters. It's a disservice to the reader. It's a disservice to the franchise that you're creating when you don't have the continuity properties that multiple people have to check off on. I don't get it. I don't get it. I didn't look into this further. I know that all the Goosebumps books have been re-released in various aspects. I don't know if this re-release in a special book was changed to reflect this past fall, not this past summer, and it's referenced 2 or 3 times in the 115 pages of this book. It's strange. The other thing that I find strange is we have 2 new bullies in this. We don't have Mickey and Joey back. We have 2 new bullies. They reference the Sumo 1, Sumo 2. Donnie and somebody. And they're picking on Greg and his friends again. But what happened to the first 2 bullies? Because the last... I'm going to put this down. I'm pitted, bro. The first book, book 4, has the first two bullies taking the camera, playing with the camera. This starts off with just Greg recapping, and he has to do an oral presentation in his class with his teacher, Mr. Sauer, S-A-U-R, Sauer, who's just an awful human and does not believe Greg's story of the time him and his friends had this adventure last summer, when it wasn't in the summer, it was in the fall, with this evil camera. But what happened with Mickey and Joey? This is a good example of certain Goosebumps plot points don't need explanation. Certain Goosebumps plot points leave off on a cliffhanger, totally fine. Certain need explanation. Certain need continuity. Certain need continuation. Ooh, that was a good word choicing of that. When we talked about this heavily with the Abominable Snowman of Pasadena, certain plot points were given to us that needed to be explored, and they were just glossed over, and then time jumped in, then nothing ever talked about again. Weird. Didn't make sense. This is a good example of doesn't make sense. What the hell happened to Mickey and Joey when they took the camera? And then how did the camera magically get back into the basement, where Greg then finds it in a dumpster? So the thing is Greg needs to get this camera back from the Kaufman house, where they put it in the secret room buried in the basement, right? Originally, which then Mickey and Joey in the first book took and started playing with the camera, and then we don't know what the hell happened with them after that, and we don't know how the hell the camera wound up back in the basement. Let's assume, for argument's sake, because we're never going to get an explanation on this, let's assume for argument's sake that the two of them had their creepy, scary adventure and then realized, bad, put the camera back. Let's just say, for my own mental health and well-being, that's what happened. Okay, fine. So Greg goes back to the Kaufman house, and it's destroyed. It's torn down, it's leveled, it's done. It's just an empty pit in the ground. The basement's gone. Everything is gone. There's a dumpster across the street. There's a kid, John, who wanders over, who says his dad and his architect are working on a project to build a house for them, because the old one was just disheveled. And then Greg's like, no, but wait, there was a camera in the basement. I need to get that. And he's like, oh yeah, it might be in the dumpster over there. You can check. So Greg finds it in the dumpster. Okay, so the camera wound up back in the basement, and then the demolition crew found it and tossed it in the dumpster. So we get the camera back. Okay, evil camera's back with the curse. Greg inadvertently takes a picture of John. John is then seen with a nail sticking through his foot because of the open construction site. And so 2 minutes later, John steps on a nail, gets rushed to the hospital by his dad and the architect. Greg steals the camera, runs away, brings it to class. Mr. Sauer doesn't want to hear it because it's a fictitious story. And then somehow, inadvertently, the two new bullies are harassing Greg, and then a picture's taken of Greg, and it's shown as him as, a 200-pound, 400-pound monster, right? It's very fat phobic, this book. Very fat phobic. So then he has that, and then Sherry inadvertently gets her picture taken, and it's a negative of her. So then Sherry starts losing weight, and Greg starts gaining weight. So in the sense of her weight is his gain, and it's just very... He's too big to fit in a chair, and he's getting made fun of for this, and he's being called an elephant, and all these different things, right? And it's wrong. It's bullying. It's very wrong. So Sherry and Greg are trying to figure out how to reverse the curse. So she then takes another picture of him, thinking that the new picture will subsequently erase the first picture, but no, he then gets these scaly patches of skin that he has to... It's just ripped and red, and it's just falling off, and I get it. I have eczema, so the eczema scales, and it itches like crazy, and it's burning, and that's eczema. That's just how it is, and it's how it is. But his is entire bodied, and it's just chunks of skin falling off. So they think, what if we rip the pictures? Will that rip the curse, or will that just make us disappear? So then they don't want to take the chance. Greg's older brother, Terry, works at a photo development place, photo store, and he asked Terry if he can reverse that. So if he can make the negative of Sherry into a positive, and if he can make the regular positive picture of Greg into a negative, Terry agrees on the course of Greg giving him 2 months of allowance. The pictures come back. The next morning, they're back to normal. Greg has his camera, brings it back to school after his 400-pound weight loss is gone, shows it to Sauer again, and then Sauer grabs the camera and takes the picture of the class, and then it's a matter of what happens next. An appropriate cliffhanger. The book was okay in the sense of how the camera got back to Greg. I think it's fine demolishing the old house, getting the camera in the dumpster, revenge for the mean teacher. Some teachers are mean, and I get it. I had horrible teachers I had great teachers, but I also had horrible teachers. So I understand that revenge aspect of the bleepity bleep bleeps who are just awful human beings and should have no purpose of being in education. I get it. So it was a revenge plot against the mean teacher who, is just awful. An awful human. I get it. I thought it was a neat twist of how to reverse the curse. Can you flip the positive to negative and negative to positive? I like that explanation. It's just, I couldn't get past the continuity difference. I couldn't get past why the hell do we have two new bullies when we had perfectly fine bullies the first time around? What happened to them? There's certain, and I think it's only this is the 44th book, right? 44 books. I've had nothing but positive things to say about this franchise as a whole. I love this franchise. This is an incredible franchise. Some books are far superior than others, and that's fine. You can't win them all, and I've said that. But this is probably the third or fourth out of 44 so far that we've talked about that I have big problems with in regards to story, in regards to continuity, in regards to plot point, in regards to character development. I think that's fine if we're looking at the percentage. If I'm talking about 3 or 4 out of 44 so far that we've talked about, and I've only had issues with 3 or 4, like big issues, where me going off on my tangents as the train runs through the station, train of thought just goes out the station, through the tunnel, jumps off the bridge, and goes through the loop-de-loop. I think that's fine in regards to odds. That's fine. What is that, a tenth? A tenth? Yeah, so 10% of the books that I've read so far, I've had major issues with. That's a good percentage. If it was 50%, then we'd be having other words. But 10%, that's not that bad at all. Not that bad at all. About 10%. Yeah, about 10%. So, book 44 in R.L. Stine's Goosebumps original series. Say cheese and die again. We've discussed everything we've needed to discuss. We have what? 50? No, we have 44 plus 10 is 54. Plus 6, so 16 is 60, 17, 18. We have 18 books left to complete our 62 book series. Let's hope there's no more problems and we stay at that around 10% mark. No guarantees, no remembrance of the other books to come. I know Monster Blood 4 is coming up at the very end, and that's my favorite franchise within this franchise, and I like that there's dual franchises within it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll get to this. This is probably the longest I've ever talked about a Goosebumps book, but there's a lot of things to say in a recapping aspect of continuity plot point issues. Yeah, that's it. On to the next review. Mahalo.